Our next session, it was a dark and funny night. Daniel Handler and Lisa Brown. Daniel Handler is the author of 6 novels, including Why We Broke Up, We Are Pirates, and most recently, All the Dirty Parts. As Lemony Snicket, he is responsible for numerous books for children. He has received commissions from the San Francisco Symphony and the Royal Shakespeare Company and has collaborated with artist Myra Kalman on a series of books for the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He lives in San Francisco with his wife, the illustrator Lisa Brown, with whom he has collaborated on several books and 1 son. Lisa Brown is a New York Times bestselling illustrator, author, and cartoonist. Her picture books include The Airport Book, How to Be, Mummy Cat by Marcus Ewart, Emily's Blue Period by Kathleen Daly, and The Latke Who Couldn't Stop Screaming, and Goldfish Ghost, both by Lemony Snicket, to whom she is allegedly married. Please welcome the couple, Daniel Handler and Lisa Brown.
Hello.
I'm waiting for a clicker.
You'll have to bear with us for 1 minute. We were scheduled to be talking with a moderator, and something awful happened. And the moderator was not here, so they got a substitute moderator. And something else awful happened, and the substitute moderator is not here. So we're here by ourselves without a moderator, as if we're at home.
You could call it a series of unfortunate events.
What? I've never heard that phrase before.
Bad puns.
Anyway,
like
so this is the illustrator, Lisa Brown.
Hello. I'm married to Daniel Handler.
It's
but
true, we're married.
Not to Lemony Snicket.
Oh.
Because that would be too many husbands.
I quite agree.
For me. I don't know about you guys, but that would be too many husbands for me.
Right, one's her maximum, we hope. And we brought some slides.
We brought some slides because I'm a visual person. And so that's Lemony Snicket.
That's what Lemony Snicket looks like.
This is Daniel Handler.
He looks a little different from me. I'm a very handsome man who is not obscuring my face with anything except the lovely microphone provided to me by the festival. Mr. Snicket is a mysterious man, not as good looking, who has a manuscript in front of his face.
Oh, that's what that is.
That's what that is.
All right. These are some books that Mr. Snicket has written.
That's true.
Yeah, they're a series of unfortunate events. Has anyone here read them?
I have.
Only a few of you have read them. Well,
I
they're
don't blame
good.
you.
I love them.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say.
Yeah.
I find them distressing and upsetting.
Yeah, they bought me a house.
I don't think we need to go into the details of that.
These are some books that Daniel Handler has written.
It's true. You'll see up there is my first novel, The Basic 8, which is a story of a girl in high school, a 17-year-old girl who has a crush on a boy, and he does not like her back, and so she bludgeons him to death with a croquet mallet. It's a comedy. And then some of my other novels are there, All the Dirty Parts, which contains sexuality, Adverbs, which is about love, We Are Pirates, which is about piracy, and Bottle Grove, which will be coming out this summer, that is about marriage.
Unlike love or sexuality, it is...
Again, there are too many details that you're bringing up right away that I didn't think we were going to discuss in front of a crowd. This is what happens when it's unmoderated.
When I'm unmoderated.
And then also, here are some picture books for which I'm allegedly responsible. 13 Words was my first picture book. It was done with the illustrator Myra Kalman, and she's a very esteemed illustrator in the United States. And many people ask about doing a picture book, how do you find the illustrator and how do you work with the illustrator? So this was my trick, was that I met Myra Kalman and I admired her very much. And so I took her to my favorite restaurant in San Francisco where they serve delicious chicken. And I thought that she would enjoy the chicken so much that she would do whatever I suggested. And so after she enjoyed her chicken, I handed her the manuscript for 13 Words. And then I excused myself as we have all done, I pretended that I need to use the bathroom even when I didn't, because I couldn't stand to watch her stare at my manuscript and decide. And I figured when I returned, either she would be gone or she would be there and we would work together. And she was there. It was a nice thing.
It was
she agreed to
really
do.
delicious
So that was
chicken.
13 words. And then we did another book together over there on the right-hand side of the slide, which is called Why We Broke Up. I noticed it was coincidentally for sale in the courtyard outside this very building. It is a love story. And unlike 13 Words, which began with a manuscript that I then gave to the illustrator, Myra Kalman, I said to Myra then, would you like to do another book? And she said, why, yes, I would. And I said, well, it would be terrible if I had to write a manuscript again and then give it to you and then take you to a restaurant and then have to hide in the bathroom while you were reading it. Why don't you tell me what you want to paint and we'll start from there. And so she told me that she wanted to paint small, ordinary objects. And as you can see, Myra's paintings are very vibrant and full of color, and I knew when she painted these small, ordinary objects, they would become beautiful. And I began to think about what makes a small, ordinary object beautiful, and one of the things is when it is infused with romantic memory. All of us have in our homes small, ordinary objects which are important to us because of their circumstances, and to everyone else they look like small, useless objects. And every so often someone will say to you, can I just throw this away? And you'll say, no! It's extremely important to me. And so Why We Broke Up is a long letter from a girl to a boy returning all the souvenirs of their relationship and telling the story of their relationship through those small souvenirs painted with romantic memory and by Myra Kalman. And these are 3 more books that I did with Myra Kalman. Myra is a great collector of things. For instance, she collects onion rings, which are fried slices of onion that most people eat or do not eat. She collects them. She keeps them in a drawer.
They last for a very
long time. They last forever,
time.
as it turns out.
That's kind of scary.
She sold one of them to the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It's true, for $20. And then she felt very bad that she'd sold the onion ring, and she asked the Modern Museum of Art if she could have it back for $20, and they said no. So one thing that she started to collect, she likes to go to flea markets, thrift stores, other markets where all kinds of objects are sold, and she began to collect photographs of girls standing on lawns. And she showed them to me, and she said, let's make a book about girls standing on lawns. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. And so we went to the Modern Museum of Art, where they own, among other things, an onion ring. And we said, would you like to do a book where we do these paintings and texts about these girls standing on lawns? And the Museum of Modern Art said, well, what we'd really rather do is have you explore the photographs that we already own here at the Modern Museum of Art, rather than the photographs that you, Myra, have just collected from various markets. And Myra, always thoughtful and quick, said, well, I would like to donate these photographs that I found to the Modern Museum of Art. And so now we will be working with photographs that you own, because congratulations, you own them. So we did a book called Girls Standing on Lawns. There it is. We did another book about the weather called Weather, Weather. And then we did a book called Hurry Up and Wait, about hurrying up and waiting. These are some other picture books that I've done with other illustrators. I don't know why we're talking about other illustrators before we're talking about the illustrator who is A, my favorite of the illustrators, and B, my favorite person. Maybe that should have been A. A, my favorite person, and B, my favorite illustrator. I think of you as a person first. Okay.
Best for last, saving the best for last.
But in either case, we're talking about books that I've done with other illustrators. This is The Bad Mood and the Stick, with art by Matt Forsyth, who's a very nice man. He startles easily, which I enjoy in a person.
He is from Canada.
He's from Canada. I don't know if all Canadians startle easily, but he startles easily. So if you sit and you have a coffee with Matthew Forsyth and you say, how are things going? Oh, do you want any sugar in your coffee? He'll spill it, and it's very amusing. And this book called The Dark, which is illustrated by John Clausen.
Canadian.
Also Canadian. And a man who
why I care.
always wears a hat. And finally, one day, I said to him, would you please take off your hat so I can see what is underneath the hat? And he took it off, and you know what was underneath it? Hair. It's a true story. Thank you for flying me all the way to Chennai so I might tell you these things that you never would have known for yourself. Next time you see John Clausen, you don't have to ask him to take off his hat, because you will know that underneath his hat is hair.
He has 3 picture books that he's written and illustrated all about hats.
All about hats.
Yeah.
He's very interested in hats.
Yeah.
Well, that is one of the spreads from the dark. I like showing this one. This is actually not the final spread from the dark because it was when we were still in process for the dark, and we thought we were done. As you can see, Mr. Clausen enjoys playing with the light and shadow of the dark, and he also enjoys layering different things. But when we got this back from the printers, it suddenly looked like a murder scene, splattered with blood, which was not at all what we had planned for the book. So we had to take it back there. But I like showing that to people to say, even when you're a skilled illustrator and you've been staring at a perfect spread for a long time, all you need is for someone to say, well, it looks like a murder scene splattered with blood. And if you're curious, who has the discerning eye and the quick judgment to realize that it looks like a murder scene splattered with blood? Well, it is none other than award-winning illustrator Lisa Brown, my favorite person.
I can't remember if I said that you should change it or I enjoyed it.
No, I think you just generally remarked that it looked like a
Yeah.
murder scene. It was not an insult.
Yeah.
It was just an
Reminder,
observation.
the title of this talk is Dark and Funny.
That's right.
So I'm glad you're laughing. And yeah,
soon we will be
leave
thinking
it
about
dark.
death.
Yeah. There's Lisa Brown. I am Lisa Brown. There am I sitting at my drafting table where
It's
I
a
do my art.
self-portrait that she drew.
It is. Actually, funny story.
Tell me.
Part of the portrait is me tracing over a piece of art that my friend Lark Pien did.
Interesting.
I don't think you ever knew that.
I did not
She
know
drew
that.
the drafting table.
She drew the drafting table.
Yeah.
You're a fraud. I'm learning so much from this
Yeah.
unmoderated conversation.
Lark is a much better drawer than me. These are some books I did for infants. It was when I had an infant, and I was really, really bored of all the little board books that you read to infants. I don't know who's familiar with a board book, but they're small and they're very stiff, so you can't rip the pages and babies can chew on them, which is fabulous because they're getting their teeth in. And I'd been reading all sorts of books to my child, my infant, about bunnies and happy things and flowers, and I thought what I really want is a cocktail and some breakfast. So these are books that teach infants how to do things that might be actually helpful instead of lying around and crying and needing their diapers changed.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
And
I
I
don't know.
should say that the infant is half mine. He's 15 now, so no longer considered an infant. But for many years, when we would have this baby, and as anyone who's ever had a baby knows, it's true, they're a lot of trouble. And we would sit around and think to ourselves, I hope why doesn't that baby do something for us?
Exactly.
And then Lisa Brown wrote and illustrated these lovely books teaching babies how to do things. And now we have this 15-year-old who occasionally will make us a cocktail. He sulks,
Yes.
but he makes it.
He does not yet do our banking or fix our car,
No,
but maybe someday.
maybe someday.
Actually, I
hope
don't
so.
want him to do our banking. He's unreliable. You should see his math grades. He won't hear this.
No, it's the middle of the night where he is right now, and he has a chill, and he doesn't even know it. He just was snug in his bed, and he felt a terrible chill because his parents were speaking ill of him
In India,
a continent away.
to an entire auditorium of people.
No.
Yeah. We live to embarrass him. Speaking of dark
Yes, and death.
and not embarrassing, this is a book I did for young adults with the young adult author Adele Griffin, who's very fabulous, and maybe her books are available in India. I hope so.
Some of them are, I know.
Yeah. And it's called Picture the Dead, and I co-authored it, and I did the illustrations, and it's a ghost story about the American Civil War. And these are some picture books that I have done, both written and illustrated, some of them, and worked with other authors on some of them. For instance, I worked with another author named Marcus Ewert, who also lives in San Francisco, where we happen to live. And it's called Mummy Cat, and it's about a mummified cat in ancient Egypt who is missing his owner, who is also a mummy. So he wanders around this tomb looking for her. Yeah, it's very sad, but ultimately satisfying, I promise.
I like the book very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This book is called The Airport Book, and you'll never guess what it's about.
I know. It's about the airport.
It's about the airport. We travel a lot, and we've traveled a lot with our son. My family lives across the country on the east coast of the United States, so we went back and forth a lot. And my son was crazy about the airport, and through his eyes, I became crazy about airports. And one thing I love about airports is how many different people from all different walks of life and all different locations come together in one place for a certain short amount of time. And you look at them and you think, where did they come from? Where are they going? And what's in their bags? And I just love that about the airport. So here's everyone standing in line. If you've ever been to an airport, you know that you stand in line an awful lot.
In a way, I think it's a microcosm for the planet that we're on. All different types of people, all with their own baggage, waiting around, and soon something will swoop in and take them far away. And we'll never see them again. Also, do you remember that our son liked the airport so much that sometimes he asked for a little bowl, that red metal bowl that we have, and he kept it by the door to his room. And then sometimes when you approached his room when he was young, he would say, hold on, empty your pockets. And you would take things out of your pockets and put them in the bowl, and only then would you be allowed to step through the doorway, as if the doorway were a security gate.
Right. I don't remember that at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I was paying more attention to him, I guess.
Maybe you looked more sinister.
That could be I looked more suspicious.
Yeah.
You
Here's
flatter me.
everyone in an airplane. And I actually put friends I knew in the windows of the airplane. So I have all these people I know that I put in the book as characters, including that woman, Lark Pien, who drew the drafting table.
Yeah, we're all coming back to there.
Yeah.
It's an additional advantage to becoming friendly with Lisa Brown. There are many advantages, because she is obviously a very charming and talented person. Also, if you like to think about death a lot, which I do, it's good to find someone else to think about it with. So if you like to think about death, I recommend befriending Lisa Brown. But as a side benefit, you may also find yourself drawn in one of her books.
It's true. There's everyone coming off the plane. You'll see there's a little girl screaming, monkey, monkey, monkey. She doesn't actually think there's a monkey in the airport. She has a toy monkey who she has misplaced and finds at the end. It's very satisfying, I promise.
The sharp-eyed reader may, in fact, see the monkey right now.
Yes.
Or maybe you're missing it. It's fine.
Yeah, if you're not sharp-eyed, that's not my problem. Here's a piece that I did for an anthology called Funny Girls, and which a bunch of funny ladies wrote pieces for an anthology.
Yeah.
And this piece is a comic called 7 Things I Thought Were, Still Think Are, Funny, and all of which happened to my younger brother, including getting candy stuck up his nose and me hitting his front tooth out with a golf club.
He's a successful surgeon now.
Yeah, don't worry.
It turned out fine.
Yeah, and it was a baby tooth. So it was fine.
In your defense.
Yeah, in my defense, it was a baby tooth. He didn't need it anyway. These are some comics I do for teenagers and grown-ups, soon to be in a collection, published in the States. Hopefully it will move around in other places besides the States. And I take novels that I read in high school or as a child, and I condense them into several, like a comic strip, several panels.
3 panels, usually.
3 panels. So I'll read.
So you have to think to yourself, would you rather read Anna Karenina in its entirety, or would you rather just go through 3 quick panels?
Yeah. What would Tolstoy
and for the rest
would have
of your
wanted?
life, pretend that you've read the classic novel Anna Karenina.
So I'll give you the sum up of Anna Karenina. It's really easy. You can see the train coming from a mile away.
It's true.
Yeah. That's a spoiler.
Yeah.
Here's some more. Oh, hearkening back to the lecture that just occurred about
Yes.
Shakespeare.
A quite charming lecture it was, I thought.
Right. I'll tell you sort of the gist of 3 Shakespearean tragedies. I can read it.
Why don't you
King
start with-
Lear.
Yeah.
My daughter's dead.
True.
Romeo and Juliet. My girlfriend's dead.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
Eventually, yes, but he
Yes.
doesn't know that.
Hamlet.
I'm dead.
I'm dead.
The last book I finished, which will not be out until next year, is now called The Phantom Twin, and it is takes place in the United States in the early 20th century, and it's about conjoined twins at a circus sideshow. So it's lots of interesting people
I'm
with
very excited about this graphic
interesting
novel.
abilities,
And it has death in it, like all exciting things.
and ghosts, like
Yeah.
all exciting things.
You may be familiar with the phenomenon known as a phantom limb, which is what happens if you lose a limb, and that people who have lost a limb in wartime or in an accident or on purpose, I don't know why that would happen, still feel the limb often. So if you've lost your right arm, you may still feel pain in your right arm, even though it's not there. Phantom twin imagines a set of conjoined twins who have an operation to be separated, and one of them does not survive, but nevertheless the one who does survive feels the phantom twin near her all the time. It's very creepy. I like it a lot.
It's dark. It's not so funny. And I think I need to take you everywhere with me after the book comes out to explain everything for me.
Oh,
Yeah. Also, it's more fun to be able to travel together.
that's right.
Yeah.
And to let our son sulk at home.
Right.
Well, there's Lemony Snicket and Lisa Brown together.
Yep.
Gosh, he's handsome.
This was the first collaboration that we'd ever done.
Yes.
It was before we were married.
Now that we've talked about each other separately, we're going to talk about each other together a little bit.
Yeah. It was a magazine. The magazine was called American Chickens.
American Chickens, it was made from a single piece of paper.
There you see it.
It was folded up there many times. And our method of distribution, which is unusual in publishing, was to carry copies of it in our pockets and leave them places where we think people might find them.
Exactly.
It was not as profitable as we might imagine, but our production costs were offset by the fact that Lisa Brown worked in an office where she could Xerox things for free. So it kept production down to a minimum. That's also a strategy you don't see used by many publishers, and I think they ought to use it more often.
Right. They need a day job. This was another book that we did together much, much later called The Latka Who Couldn't Stop Screaming. And the Latka is a...
Let's see who knows what a latka is. Does anyone know what a latka is?
Oh, hands.
Do you want to say it out loud? A Jewish potato pancake. I couldn't have said it better myself.
It's like a dosa,
I like
not
that
as
people are
delicious.
applauding. I don't know if they're applauding for your answer or just for Jews in general, which is great.
I
Because
think,
we're both Jewish, so it's nice to travel and get a little love.
I think they're applauding potato pancake.
Okay, they could be applauding the fact that they're delicious.
They are
There's
delicious.
also that.
They're not as delicious as dosas, I think.
Oh.
Think about it.
Well, I think that this should be settled at a future literary festival where we will have latkes and dosas side by side, and the crowd will vote.
Yeah. A potato-themed literary festival.
Potato-themed literary festival. Then many Irish writers should come too.
It's true. So the latke, a potato pancake, is born in a small village. And he is mistaken, it's around the time of a holiday called Christmas, which most of you probably are familiar with. In America, the majority of people, I would say, celebrate Christmas, and the minority of people do not. And so if you are in a minority that does not celebrate Christmas, you are inundated constantly with Christmas music, Christmas decorations,
What my wife was trying to say,
Christmas
that she gets
everything.
very cranky during the Christmas season. Some of us, even if we are Jewish, don't mind wandering around and seeing a lot of Christmas cheer. Others get extremely cranky about it. So this book is about a latke who is born and wanders a Christmas-themed world and gets angrier and angrier and angrier.
I think, in my defense, it's not the Christmas that makes me cranky, it's the cheer.
Oh,
Yeah. As you might recall, I am from the New England region.
yes.
Of
Known
America.
for its lack of cheer.
Yeah. We are a cheerless people. So potato pancake is fried up in oil in a pan, much like a dosa. And he does not like that, because who among us would like to be fried up in oil?
None of us.
None of us. So he goes screaming out into the forest where he interacts with Christmas decorations. Another book we did together.
This is a book that we did called 29 Myths on the Swinster Pharmacy, which is about the building that is in your neighborhood that you don't know anything about, that you were completely obsessed with during your childhood. Each of us has had one, something in the neighborhood that seems full of mystery and wonder. In this case, it is a pharmacy. Mm-hmm. It was inspired by a store near me when I was growing up that sold wigs and was never open, but never closed. What was going on in the wig store? And my mother told me that it was a front, which means that there was a criminal enterprise going on behind it, but it was never open. Who cares what was going on behind it if you couldn't go in?
Yeah.
I miss you, Sandy's wigs.
It's no longer there. Oh, now we come to the inspiration part of the program, where we talk about things that inspired us as children. And yeah, go ahead.
And this is my favorite
yours.
book in the entire world. It's called The Bear's Famous Invasion of Sicily. You have not read it. It's by Dino Buzzati, an Italian author who is also responsible for several angry political works for grown-ups, which have their charm. But to me, nothing is as charming as The Bear's Famous Invasion of Sicily. And you'll see there on the right is a picture of Demon Castle, an important scene in The Bear's Famous Invasion of Sicily. And that, for me, was the illustration. I'm sure all of us have had this in our childhood as well. An illustration that you stare at for hours on end during your childhood, trying to plumb its mysteries, as if it is a pharmacy in your neighborhood, or perhaps a wig store.
That's very nice. Well done.
Thank you. Oh, this was my least favorite book when I was a child. It's called Stand Up, Shake Hands, and Say How Do You Do. It is a book of etiquette. I did not own it when I was a child. I read it, and I read it because it was at a small department store called Young Man's Fancy, where once a year I was taken by my mother to get fancy clothes. I hated it. I hated going there to get fancy clothes. In San Francisco, where I am from, the fancy clothes are usually a navy blue suit, and you have to be measured up inside your leg and the inner thigh when you were a boy, and you're permanently mortified as a result of that. So first you go with your mother, and you're measured in your upper leg, and you feel extremely embarrassed, and then your mother talks with the salesperson, and I don't have any verification of this, I only have my memory, for 19 hours. And you sit in a small chair and look at the only book that is sold at Young Man's Fancy, which is a book of etiquette called Stand Up, Shake Hands, and Say How Do You Do. And I remembered it being a terrible, terrible book. And finally, when I was an adult, I decided that I would find a copy of this book and buy it and see if it was as terrible as I thought, and it was not. It was worse. It was even worse than I remembered as a child. I try at a literary festival to have love and respect for all of my fellow authors and illustrators who come to a festival. There's nothing I like better, but if the author or illustrator of Stand Up, Shake Hands, and Say How Do You Do was at this festival, I would cut them dead. They would say, nice to meet you, and I would just look away. That's how much I despise this book. Oh, I feel a lot better. Thank you.
Go
yes,
on.
sorry, moving on. Oh, yes. This is a French novel that inspired me very much when I was young, and part of it is because I had this beautiful edition which was illustrated by Edward Gorey, an illustrator and author whom Lisa and Brown and I admire very much. There's more Edward Gorey I think you're showing, right?
Well, now we're getting on to the Lisa Brown inspiration part of the program.
Speaking of Edward Gorey.
And this was ostensibly a children's book by Edward Gorey called The Gashly Crumb-Tinies, and it's an alphabet book. And each letter of the alphabet is a child's name, and then there's a rhyme about how they died.
26 dead children appear in the book. It's
so,
26 pages long, one dead child per page.
Right. N is for Neville, who died of ennui.
Ennui.
Which is my favorite way of dying. Ennui.
What's your favorite way to think of dying?
Right, no, I don't want to die.
No.
No. But I like to think of being so bored and you just die.
But bored in a glamorous way.
Yes.
That's what I think of as ennui.
Ennui.
Yeah. There's regular bored, and then there's the kind of bored where you actually feel special inside while you're being bored, and you hope everyone is noticing how bored you are and thinking, gosh, what a glamorous-looking bored person that is.
Ennui.
That got a bigger round of applause than Latka's. I don't know what's happening. I'm learning a lot.
This was another book that obsessed me as a little child.
Oh, sorry, could we just go back one step to Edward Gorey again? Because I thought I should tell my Edward Gorey story.
All right.
So Edward Gorey is responsible for a number of picture books like this, or I don't even know what you would call them. Strange books that entranced me when I was a child and continue to entrance me, and had a huge influence, as you may gather just looking at them, on the entire world of Lemony Snicket, in which distressing things happen over and over again in an unending parade of gloom and despair. So when I had concluded writing The Bad Beginning, not only The Bad Beginning, but The Reptile Room, which the first 2 volumes of a series of unfortunate events were released concurrently, I sent a copy of each book to Edward Gorey with a note saying how much I admired his work and how I hoped he would forgive me for all that I had stolen from him, and that I hoped someday we would meet and become compatriots in ennui and gloom. And a few weeks later, he died. So I like to think that I killed him, even though I have no direct evidence of that. Moving on.
Lonely Doll.
The Lonely Doll.
I just loved this book. It was photo illustrated. It was about a doll who
was
lived
lonely.
in a New York apartment all by herself. It was very mysterious to me and glamorous, and 2 teddy bears came to stay with her randomly, uninvited, and she wasn't lonely anymore. And I always thought, why does she put up with this? And she got spanked at one point by the big teddy bear.
You know your microphone's on and you're saying this out loud, right?
The things you see when you're a child and you can't forget, and then you see them later and you realize they're just as weird as you thought they were. This was another inspiration, was the author and illustrator Maurice Sendak, who is most well known for Where the Wild Things Are. And this was his books that were very, very small, called The Nutshell Library. It was a very tiny little collection. And this was the page that I came back and looked at over and over and over. And the whole book was about chicken soup with rice. And it was a book that taught you about the months of the year. And October, the time of year of Halloween, had chicken soup with rice being served to goblins, witches, and a ghost. This is another beautiful book by an illustrator named Tomi Ungerer, who is, I think he lives in Ireland. He's from Alsace-Lorraine and spent a lot of time in the States. And it's called The 3 Robbers, and it's about 3 robbers. Yeah. And then these were books that I love step-by-steps. So this was a step-by-step book about how to draw animals, and a step-by-step book about how to care for your monster. Both equally important skills.
I quite agree. You never know when you're going to be called upon to draw an animal or
care for your monster.
Care for your monster.
Yeah. All right. I want to know how much time we have.
I thought you were joking, because the nice people here just put up a sign saying 15 minutes to go.
Is it 15 minutes for the whole thing?
Okay.
Because I think that we will run through this book very quickly instead of slowly, and then have time for questions.
That sounds fun.
Okay. Are you going to read the book?
I
will click the book?
Yes. This book is called Goldfish Ghost. The text is by Lemony Snicket. The illustrations are by my personal favorite illustrator and favorite person, Lisa Brown.
Thank you. Do you need me to hold your microphone?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Goldfish Ghost was born on the surface of the water in a bowl on the dresser in a boy's room. How many people here are responsible for the death of a fish? Obviously, all of you. I was just seeing who's too ashamed to admit it, madam.
I thought we said quickly go through it.
For quite some time, he stared at the ceiling. The boy's room was pleasant and familiar, but there was nobody there to talk to. Still, Goldfish Ghost floated out of the bowl and drifted toward the window to find some company. Outside the window was a seaside town. It had a fishing pier, a row of shops, a sandy beach, and a lighthouse everyone said was haunted.
It's called foreshadowing.
At the pier was a great mess of birds who were all excited about the fishing boats. It was interesting to hear them shriek, but they paid no attention to Goldfish Ghost. They were not good company. When the wind changed, the birds moved on, and Goldfish Ghost let the breeze take him into town. The streets were busy with interesting-looking people buying sweaters and postcards and pets and groceries, but everybody there was with somebody else, and no one was looking for company.
I just want to stop and say, when you said before that I put people I know into the books.
Yes.
So on this page alone is my brother-in-law, my friend Wendy, and our friend Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is marry my sister, and then maybe you'll get into a picture book.
Yep.
Goldfish Ghost followed a rattly jeep full of loud music and found himself at the beach.
In this spread, not only is Wendy and my brother-in-law still there, but a man who cannot row, do kayaking at all. What do you say? Steer a kayak?
I don't think we should talk about this. There's a lot of skills that an individual might have, and just because one isn't good at moving in a kayak doesn't mean that one needs to be humiliated on a stage in front of a lot of people.
When I say go left,
maybe
it
they're
means
good
left.
at narrative fiction.
You don't go right
Maybe
or go
they've
in
won
a
a
circle all the
Nickelodeon
way
Children's
around.
Choice Award. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. They're just not good at kayaking. It's not a big deal.
It's infuriating.
None of the bathers even gave him a glance, but floating over the water were the ghosts of creatures who lived in the sea. They were all very interesting, but Goldfish Ghost did not feel quite at home on top of the ocean. It can be hard to find the company you are looking for. Goldfish Ghost rested atop a beach umbrella and wondered what to do. Eventually it got late, so he decided to head back to the bowl. Another goldfish was there, but she was not a ghost. She seemed nice enough, but she was not good company, and the moon called Goldfish Ghost back out the window. "I've been looking for company," said a voice. It was the ghost of the lighthouse keeper who had been watching him from the lantern room. "Do you live here all alone?" asked Goldfish Ghost. "Not anymore," the keeper said, and she took him in her quiet hands and placed him where the light had once shone for sailors at sea. The two ghosts settled in together, looking out quietly at the world. They were very good company.
Yeah.
And I find you very good company, Lisa Brown.
Thank you. I find you very good company, Daniel Handler.
And now if you have a question, you may indicate it by raising your hand. And if you do not have a question, you may indicate it by not doing that.
Do you find your series of books better than the TV series on Netflix? Because most people find the series on Netflix better.
Really? Well, I must say I'm feeling a lot better about that kayaking thing now. Do I find the books better than the Netflix series? Here's my feeling about the Netflix series and the books is that it takes a very long time to read 13 books, and it takes much less time to watch the Netflix series. And so it's really a matter of whether you like to rip a bandage right off a wound or if you like to peel it off slowly. It depends which method of pain you enjoy.
In series of unfortunate events,
Yes.
at the starting of each book, there's like a line written for Beatrice.
For Beatrice, yes.
Who is she or he?
Yeah, there was a question about that the other day too, and some people have, in fact, stopped me at the festival to ask me such a question. And it's an upsetting and sad story about Beatrice, so I just want to make sure. And the microphone, you guys can hear me, right? The microphone's working? Because it would be really terrible if I told this story and you couldn't hear it because I only want to tell it once. A long time ago, probably before you were born, how old are you? 12, so yes, before you were born, there was a woman named Beatrice. And it's just not a story I want to repeat.
So far, how many books have you read?
I'm sorry? How many books have I read?
No, how many books have you read?
How many books have I written? Fewer than I've read. But too many. I've written too many books. I don't like to count them sometimes because it fills me with anxiety. So it's too many.
Can you please reply that question? I really want to know who Beatrice is.
I told you specifically I would only tell this story once, and I hope the microphone would not short out. So if you have a problem with the Hindus-sponsored auditory system...
Please make the mic work.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Am I that short? Okay. Who do you credit your sense of humor to? I mean, it's so quirky and all of that. Where do you get it from?
Where do I get it from?
Your sense of humor?
Yeah.
My sense of humor?
Your mother.
Well, everything.
I mean, I think we said earlier we were Jewish, so that is kind of the same answer.
I think that's universal.
Yeah, no, I don't mean that humor is not prevalent.
No, I mean mothers.
Outside the Jewish. Oh, you mean mothers?
Mothers.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, okay. I think certainly universal, the wife and the mother relationship that we're seeing right now feels something that we can all understand. I grew up in a household in which depressing stories and jokes were told almost simultaneously all of the time. It turned out all right.
Touch and go.
You have the book series of unfortunate events, and you ended it very ambiguously. But in the Netflix show, it was quite happier than the books. So why did you do that?
That wasn't his choice.
It's true, there were some arguments with Netflix that occurred, as will always occur in a collaboration, even one in which you enjoy each other's company. Because kayaking has nothing to do with making a book, so there's no reason you have to get into it all the time. But I think because TV is so directly in front of your eyeballs and harder to escape than literature, that many people who were responsible for paying for the Netflix series were worried that it would be too depressing. This is a frequent argument that I would have.
But if people like the Netflix series better, then maybe they won.
I have no idea what to say to that. Something's happening, I don't know what.
It's hard to see. No one else has a question.
No one else has a question. That's refreshing.
I think they do.
I'll start to ask questions then. Who else? Let's see what other Jewish foods everyone knows. Who likes the matzah ball?
Yep.
Okay.
She likes a matzo
Yeah.
ball.
Do you prefer picture books or novels?
Do I prefer picture books or novels? I'm so grateful not to have to choose. It's one thing I like actually about literature is that there are so many different types of literature and so many different types of people, and so that all of us can wander around this world and be comforted and inspired and excited by different types of literature. So the answer to that multiple choice question is yes.
Hello. Hello, good evening.
First of all, I would like to say that I have been to many a festival and that I am so impressed with the professionalism and the enthusiasm of the young volunteers who are often helping out here. That being said, however, there are few things more terrifying than looking at a red sign saying 5 minutes to go.
Hello.
I think to myself, I knew I would die sometime, but I didn't think it was going to be in 5 minutes. Goodness gracious. Oh, yeah, and I would like to spend my last 5 minutes with you, madam.
First, can I say that I like the books better than the Netflix series?
Okay, well, I have a young man you may fight with later.
Yeah, I'm sure you get asked this question quite often, but what do you think happened to the Baudelaire children, to the Baudelaire orphans? Yeah.
I think happened to the Baudelaire children? I like that question very much. What do I think happened to the Baudelaire children? At the end of a series of unfortunate events, Mr. Snicket says that he has lost complete track of them, and he doesn't know where they are, and that he's always anxious for news. And one of the nice things about being associated with Lemony Snicket for a living is that I receive many letters meant for Mr. Snicket, and I read them because I'm not going to get in trouble for opening other people's mail in this case. And what I like to hear is I hear from people literally all over the world who tell me what they think has happened to them, or that they have some piece of information that has happened to them. So what I like to think about most is what other people are thinking about what happened to the Baudelaires. That's what I like to think of that. And sometimes if, say, I'm supposed to be driving a kayak while I'm thinking about that, might not go as well as some New York Times best-selling award-winning illustrators might prefer.
Is there any time? Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Sorry, accidentally I came to here. I don't know about you. I didn't read anything because my grandchildren are not with me. But I enjoyed every second of it.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, I should have said questions or compliments are welcome. Well, I don't think we should have anything after that. We were complimented so deeply, and we have enjoyed our time so much at this festival, and we're so grateful to be here. And with only probably a minute left in my life, I would like to thank you and to encourage you to go out and enjoy other events at the festival. But if you would prefer, I will be in a tent shortly with my wife, the talented illustrator, Lisa Brown. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I request you not to crowd the authors as they leave the stage. They will be available for book signings outside to my right